The last thing King George III wanted was a citizenry of strong, capable, and armed men. But we still have guns, lots of them, despite the political left's attack on the Second Amendment and the American male. What happens to good people when they allow themselves to be disarmed by a handful of tyrants at the top of the political system and a gaggle of weak but power-hungry political activists? Well, they become subjects and are then told what to do. We can see this in countries like Venezuela, China, and even our close friends in Canada. Democrats in America have been trying this for decades, and they've come close with a few pieces of legislation. Things like the 1934 National Firearms Act, the 1968 Gun Control Act, the Brady Act in 1993, and the Federal Assault Weapons Ban of 1994, among others. Fortunately, we the people have fought back and pushed back much of the anti-gun laws that would eventually make us subjects of our government. GOA has been on the front lines of many of these court battles at the national and state level. The deterioration of gun ownership occurs slowly over time, but it takes consistent effort from the gun grabbers. At the time of our founding, guns in the hands of every able-bodied male and much of the female population was commonplace. Fast forward to the 20th century and this started to change. As gun laws are implemented, which bring with them restrictions, new requirements, and fees, it makes it more difficult for some people to possess and certainly carry firearms in public, where they would otherwise normally do so. But despite these efforts from the radical gun grabbers, the Second Amendment has remained relatively strong, which is why it's been so important for them to keep their foot on the gas. They must continue the anti-gun propaganda and fear campaign because they know that the minute they stop, we Americans will gravitate back toward our roots and understand the importance of the Second Amendment. And the interest to support gun legislation will start to wane. When other countries took guns away from citizens, they not only took away their self-defense, but they took away their self-esteem and pride, because tyrants know that if they can weaken a man, they can dominate him. This may be why the Democrats in America have implemented the toxic male campaign and have celebrated the weak, emasculated beta male in society. They not only normalized something that would have been laughed at just a few decades ago, but marketed it in such a way that made it appear to be popular. Rugged individualism and masculinity are dangerous to a tyrant, which is why we've noticed for the past 2 or more decades the political left doing everything they can to weaken the American male and disarm him. The marketing program was created in such a way that would encourage the average American male to fear guns and eventually despise them. But those marketing this image of the new American male knew that they must give their subjects a sense of intellectual and moral superiority at the same time. This is the fuel that allows them to go out into the public and perpetuate the lie that real men don't need guns and masculinity is somehow toxic. This is what gives them the arrogance and the entitlement to promote the idea of taking guns away from their fellow citizens and encouraging them to discard their inherent tendency to be strong fathers, leaders, and protectors. The shaming of masculinity in America has been very clear by the political left, and unfortunately, some of the weaker among us have fallen for it. In an attempt at implementing reverse psychology on the topic of masculinity and gun ownership, we've heard things like real men don't need a gun and the idea that gun ownership is some sort of cover-up for a lack of masculine esteem, all for the purpose of encouraging men to lay down their arms and give up their power in an effort to be accepted by a new immorally driven societal narrative. This appeals to the weak-minded who need to be accepted and don't have the strength or guts to stand up for themselves, their families, or their country. The truth is, real men do need guns if they want to protect the ones they love from danger and the country they love from tyranny. Weak, disarmed, and fearful men are easy to control. Our founders knew this, which is why that was not an option at the time. Firearms give us the ability to stay strong and in charge of our own lives while fighting back against those who want to turn us into subjects. Firearms give us leverage, and the gun grabbers know this. That's why they want them so badly. Go to any liberal city in America and ask yourself, where have all the strong men gone? You might notice a few other commonalities in these parts of our country. Typically, cities are run by Democrats and very tightly controlled. Gun laws are most always implemented, and violence is typically very high. Criminals are allowed to run wild, while law-abiding citizens are restricted to drinking through paper straws and showing their vaccine card before entering a coffee shop. It's at this point that a victim-predator society is created. The violence that occurs in these cities may look out of control, but is it possible this is very well orchestrated for the purpose of keeping the lawful, tax-paying voters fearful and unwilling to step out of line, or to keep them dependent on government for protection? This would ensure that they continue voting for the politicians who promise them safety but never actually deliver. The armed American male doesn't need the protection of a politician. When men are weakened by brainwashing, political propaganda, and disarmament through unconstitutional legislation, society is quickly overtaken by power-hungry politicians. Now, the crime that occurs in these cities is not only because good people can't defend themselves, but also because the political left perpetuates the violence for the sake of keeping their subjects living in fear. What's the best way to keep citizens from rising up against a tyrannical government? Well, keep them in fear, keep them weak, and keep them unarmed and helpless. Gun laws in America are not about saving lives as the political left would like you to believe. Gun laws in America are for the purpose of Democrats disarming their political opposition. We saw what our founding fathers did. We saw the 3% of colonists who stood up against the king and his army. We love that story because it's prideful. It's strong, and it reminds us why we're free today. Weak men are controlled men, and a disarmed citizenry becomes subjects of the state. Our founding fathers knew that there would be people who would try to put America back under control of a monarchy. That's why they wrote the Second Amendment. Thanks for watching Bullet Points. I'm Dan Wass for Gun Owners Foundation. You can find more Second Amendment content and updates at gunowners.com.